Hello everyone, happy Pride Month to you all. My name is Todd Camp and I'm the founder and director of Yesterqueer, the Tarrant County LGBTQ+ History Project. To give you a little background on myself, I was a writer, editor, and designer at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram for 18 years, where I covered a variety of topics, including occasionally writing about gay issues. In 1995, I started a gay film discussion group at my alma mater, Texas Christian University, which was expanded into Q Cinema, Fort Worth's Gay and Lesbian International Film Festival in 1998 with co-founder Sean Moore. I served as the festival's artistic director for 14 years, during which time I introduced the idea of a gay history project. My initial interest centered around documenting the more than 300 LGBTQ bars that have existed in Tarrant County over the years, but I broadened my scope during COVID-19 lockdown when a private Facebook group I started began to double and triple in size as a response to my regular postings on local gay history, as well as showing items from the archive of materials I'd collected over the years. When COVID lifted, I started a gay history happy hour to see if interest extended beyond an online presence, and its success has inspired me to turn Yesterqueer into a full-fledged 501c3 nonprofit organization. Yesterqueer is dedicated to preserving the stories, memories, photos, and ephemera of the LGBTQ+ community of Tarrant County. Our goal is to share that information across a variety of digital channels, as well as through public discussions and events, very much like this one, in order to generate interest in our community's rich history, not only with the people who remember it, but with future generations of queer youth and allies who hope to learn from it. If you'd like more information about Yesterqueer or want to know how to sign up for our newsletter or volunteer, I'll have more information at the end. But without further ado, let's move on to today's topic, more than 50 years of pride in Tarrant County. The origins of the gay pride movement date back to 1969 and center around the patrons of the Stonewall Inn, a small bar in Greenwich Village in New York City. Since its establishment in 1967, the bar had been frequently raided by police officers trying to clean up the neighborhood of sexual deviants. But when police officers attempted to raid the establishment around 1 a.m. on June 28th, angry gay youth, drag performers, and others clashed with the aggressive officers, with a melee spilling into the streets and leading to a 3-day riot. Despite generating thousands of protesters, the event received only minimal local news coverage, but nonetheless ignited the fire behind what would become America's modern LGBTQ rights movement. In 2009, Fort Worth would share its own connection to this historic event when a local gay bar was raided on Stonewall's 40th anniversary, but we'll get to that later. The first ever gay pride parades were held on June 28, 1970 in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. However, the historic LA event, which is the first permitted parade, actually has Cowtown roots, believe it or not. The Christopher Street West Parade, as it was known, almost began as a march or a demonstration, but one of the event's 3 organizers, the Reverend Troy Perry, who was also the founder of the Metropolitan Community Church, famously said, "No, we're going to do a parade, this is Hollywood." Christopher Street West's other 2 founders were the Reverend Bob Humphreys, who was also founder of United States Mission, and a young man named Morris Kite. Kite was born in Comanche County, Texas, and graduated from Texas Christian University in 1941. He founded the Gay Liberation Front LA and was a co-founder of Aid for AIDS in 1983, the Gay Community Center in 1971, now the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Center, the Stonewall Democratic Club in 1975, and many others. He is remembered as one of the fathers of the gay and lesbian civil rights movement. Go Frogs. Though Fort Worth wasn't exactly an early adapter to the gay rights movement, I did find mention of a Gay Fest picnic hosted in Oakland Lake Park on June 1st, 1975. The event was sponsored by a newly formed gay organization called AURA, which stood for Awareness, Unity, and Research Association, founded by local activist Ken Sear. There may have been several of these held prior to the formation of the first official gay pride group in the early 80s. Gary Taylor, better known by his drag persona Raina Lee, is said to have begun hosting gatherings for groups of gay friends in the mid to late 70s. The first gatherings were held at Forest Park's Shelter House, which provided a place to meet in public and allow attendees to be themselves without judgment, without discrimination, and without fear. These gatherings eventually evolved into the Pride Picnic. The first official Pride Picnic was held on June 19, 1982 at Forest Park at the Shelter House and on a large grassy slope nearby dubbed Raina Lee Hill after the event's founder. It was followed by a week of activities at area bars and other LGBTQ organizations. This led to the formation of the Fort Worth Gay Pride Week Association, which has hosted an annual parade and picnic for more than 40 years. Ranelagh Hill lies directly beneath St. Stephen Presbyterian Church, which I remember having been dubbed Fort God in my TCU days because of its resemblance to a hilltop castle. I heard some chilling anecdotes from more than a few folks at those first truly public gay events. Many feared that a potential sniper might be on the roof of the nearby church, calling to mind the 1966 Charles Whitman massacre at the University of Texas in Austin. Those recollections cast an uneasy pall over recent Pride celebrations, especially in this charged political climate in which we're living. The first Tarrant County Gay Pride Week Association sponsored event the following year came with more promotion, including posters, a program, t-shirts, hats, pins, etc. It also drew a much larger crowd with more than 1,000 in attendance and opening remarks by Don Baker of the Dallas Gay Alliance. Baker was best known as the primary plaintiff with the backing of the Texas Human Rights Foundation in the Baker v. Wade case in 1982, which challenged the 2106 law, a Texas code which bans homosexual conduct of any kind. Other Pride celebrations throughout the 1980s brought a number of firsts. In 1984, the event's Forest Park location sparked a battle with the Fort Worth Parks and Recreation Department because of the area's reputation as a gay cruising spot, leading to a new location in 1985 at Greenway Park. Casting a shadow on the blossoming Pride movement nationally, however, was the arrival of a new disease dubbed GRID, gay-related immune deficiency, which first emerged on both coasts and began spreading throughout communities of gay men in large cities in 1981. More accurately renamed AIDS, autoimmune deficiency syndrome, in 1982, the disease didn't officially make its way to Tarrant County until 1985, with 32 confirmed cases and 19 deaths by November of that year. Almost overnight, bars became unlikely hosts for memorials, and organizations turned to fundraising for those impacted by the illness. Longtime familiar faces, community leaders, and popular performers were eulogized far too often and far too soon. Tiger Lil, aka Michael Courier, a legendary local drag performer, was one of the first high-profile locals to be claimed by AIDS in 1987 at the age of 31. She was followed by Michael Robinson, aka Mother Michael, another local pillar, in 1990. But Pride still found a way to move on, hosting floats in the Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio Pride parades. Finally, in 1989, the group held Fort Worth's first official Pride Parade on June 4th. The parade kicked off on Rosedale and proceeded down South Jennings Avenue past Pennsylvania, the heart of the Cowtown gayborhood, or the closest thing Cowtown had to one. The area had come home to community bars like the 651, across the street, the Corral, and the Come Along Inn. By the 1990s, the local media began to take notice of the celebration, as demonstrated by this selection of pictures from the 1990 parade by Fort Worth Star-Telegram photographer Joyce Marshall from the UTA Special Collections Archive. The Grand Marshals pictured are local legend Ranelagh, aka Gary Taylor, the mother of gay pride in Fort Worth, with Jerry Cassidy, better known to friends as Big Mama. Cassidy was a fixture of gay nightlife, having worked at clubs as far back as the late 1960s. Sadly, Taylor, who was a tireless advocate in the fight against AIDS, lost his battle with the disease just a little over a year later. He was 42 years old. On June 25, 1994, Trinity Metropolitan Community Church hosted a Trinity Gay Pride Review called Stonewall Reenacted, a tribute to Ranelagh, with the tagline, "Celebrating our lesbian pride and heritage." And I am really glad the word lesbian didn't catch on. One of the show's opening lines was, "The best way to silence a people is to rob them of their history." And the presentation endeavored to do just the opposite, providing speakers on a variety of topics, including the community's political, religious, and organizational history, followed by a reenactment of the Stonewall riots. The 2000s brought major political change, with Fort Worth becoming the first city in Texas to protect people from discrimination based on real or perceived sexual orientation in September of 2000. A long-fought battle to overturn Texas's homosexual conduct law was won on June 26, 2003, with a Supreme Court decision on Lawrence v. Texas that essentially decriminalized consensual private sexual acts between adults. It was nice to truly have something to celebrate for a change, and the new millennium brought a number of changes to local pride celebrations as well, with the picnic moving to Hanley Meadowbrook Park in 2001, Forest Park Pavilion in 2003, and eventually Trinity Park in 2004, which became the event's home for the next several years. In 2007, the Tarrant County Gay Pride Week Association moved their celebration week to October in an effort to beat the June heat. But as the decade drew to a close, the events of a single night would change the Fort Worth gay community forever. On June 28, 2009, members of the Fort Worth Police Department and the Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission raided the newly opened Rainbow Lounge, formerly the 651 and the city's oldest consecutive gay bar. Several patrons were placed in zip ties and arrested for public intoxication and occasionally violent confrontations. Officers took one young man down so roughly that he was later hospitalized with a brain injury. To literally add insult to injury, that evening was also the 40th anniversary of the Stonewall riots in New York. The raid of the Rainbow Lounge sparked international news coverage, weeks of angry protests, an intense internal police investigation, and the formation of Fairness Fort Worth, a group of individuals, business leaders, and organizations from the area committed to ensuring everyone is treated fairly, with dignity and respect. The group successfully negotiated with the police and city leaders for a list of sweeping reforms, including changes to Fort Worth's anti-discrimination policies, as well as diversity training for all city officials. The changes captured attention nationwide, prompting other cities to reach out for advice in dealing with their own municipal governments. For many of the people who were in the bar that night, they recall it as being one of the most awful evenings of their entire lives. I, however, remember it as the worst birthday ever. The day after the raid, Dallas filmmaker Robert Camina began documenting the subsequent protests, investigation, police and TABC response, and city council meetings. He also spoke with many of the patrons in attendance that evening. In 2012, Camina's film, Raid of the Rainbow Lounge, narrated by Meredith Baxter, made its world premiere at the AMC Palace 9 downtown. It went on to play at film festivals throughout North America, collecting a number of awards along the way, and serving as an educational tool for city officials, community organizers, and LGBTQ youth. Here's a look at the trailer.
One minute, everything's great and fine. The next minute, there are police everywhere, all over the bar, and people are just being grabbed and taken out. He grabbed the guy in front of me, grabbed him by the shoulder, turned him around, told him that he was drunk, put him in zip tie handcuffs, and then dragged him off in front of me.
They were taking someone out. They were taking another person out. And they were slowly taking people out.
I mean, people were just scrambling.
Lots of confusion on what was going on.
You would think that almost they had had a really bad night and this was going to be the end of it and they were going to take all their aggressions right here on this group of people.
They had a young man pinned up against the wall. They took him to the ground, face first.
They were all jumping on his limp body with their knees and elbows in the back of his neck.
I had actually never seen violence like that in person before.
I'm afraid. Are they going to attack more people? Are they going to target more people?
Those officers took something from me I may never get back. They took my sense of safety and security. And they had no right to do that.
And it was offensive to us to suggest that it's our fault that the violence was used against us. That we were making sexual advances and we groped an officer and we were dealt with accordingly.
It sickened me because that's the blame the victim mentality.
We need to do something. We need to do something today.
It was very clear from all the positioning of the mayor and the Fort Worth police chief that they wanted nothing to do with what happened at the Rainbow Lounge. Our goal was to stand up for ourselves as a community.
I think this tragic event has created and will create so much wonderful change in the community.
These are things that have all begun because of this incident.
I hope that at some point, at the very least, we learned something.
We as a city have recognized that we have some shortcomings, and we're stepping out to address those.
I mean, there's nothing you can do to change that it happened, and I probably will never forget about it. But we just need your help to move on.
If you haven't had a chance to watch the documentary, I encourage you to do so. It's a fascinating, by-the-minute record of what transpired that night and afterwards, and its depiction of the raw emotions from those of us who were there is as palpable today as it was then. You can currently stream it for free on Tubi. The 2010s brought the largest visibility Tarrant Pride celebrations have had to date. While the annual parade had always been down South Jennings Avenue, in celebration of the 30th Pride celebration in 2011, the parade moved downtown, with a big post-parade party taking place at the park in front of the Tarrant County Convention Center. The move sparked significantly more news coverage, including all of the local TV stations, as well as a much more vigorously nasty group of protesters. But this decade made it clear that the Fort Worth LGBTQ community had become an essential part of what makes Cowtown special. The Pride festivities in 2015 were extra exuberant when on June 5th, 2015, with a 5-4 decision in the case Obergefell versus Hodges, the United States Supreme Court declared same-sex marriage legal in all 50 states. But the community was dealt another disappointing setback 2 years later, when in the early morning of June 1st, 2017, the first day of Pride Month, a fire ripped through the iconic Rainbow Lounge, destroying Fort Worth's longest-running gay bar. Having opened its doors in 1969, the same year as the Stonewall riots sparked the rise of the gay rights movement, a symbol of LGBTQ longevity was reduced to ashes. I was asked to commemorate the bar and its role in our history in a cover piece for the Fort Worth Weekly, which became the primary starting point for what would later become Yesterqueer. The end of the decade also saw a new generation of Pride arise from the ashes with the arrival of Trinity Pride in 2019, reintroducing a June event just in time to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. They held their first wildly successful festival on Magnolia Green on the city's south side and revived the tradition of celebrating National Pride Month in June, despite the Texas heat. Both Pride organizations went dormant in 2020 with the arrival of COVID-19, shuttering pretty much everything. However, in 2021, Trinity Pride hosted a fully virtual celebration dubbed a Community Rebounds. By providing a lot of online content, including video interviews with community leaders, along with drag performances by some of the area's top talents, the event also included in-person events with various local sponsors, as Fort Worth and the rest of the world slowly began to emerge from a worldwide pandemic. In 2022, the Health Education Learning Project, HELP, hosted the first Arlington LGBTQA+ Pride at their Mid-Cities location, which proved to be a packed and auspicious debut, followed by the return of Trinity Pride later that month. This year's Pride Month is more packed than ever, with Arlington Pride jump-starting the month on June 10th, followed by the LGBTQ+ Saves Picnic on June 17th, and Trinity Pride on June 24th. I haven't confirmed for sure whether the Tarrant County Gay Pride Week Association Picnic and Parade will return in October, but looking at the lineups for these events, as well as dozens of other celebrations across the area, not to mention at various businesses and organizations in Fort Worth and Arlington, one thing seems clear to me. Pride is alive and well in Tarrant County. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to know more about Yesterqueer, you can find us online at the following links and in the summary of this video. I hope you all have a wonderful Pride Month, and we will see you at the celebrations.